Welcome everybody. So this video is going to be quite long. It's all about the replacement of the dual climate control valve and also the remote climate control module, which were identified as being problematic in the previous video. I've captured all of this on this video. I hope you enjoy it. If you do have any questions, do leave them in the comments section below and I'll attempt to answer them as best I can. I'll also include some information in the description as well. So today we're looking at finally getting around to replacing the dual climate control valve, which we know is faulty on the S-Type R here. So to make a start, I need to make some space. So I'll be starting with taking the cover off. I'll also remove the Caldoofy tube. I'll then look to release the nut for the expansion tank here. In fact, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to suck out the coolant that's currently in the expansion tank. I'll also cap off and remove these two pipes here. One's from the radiator, one's from the supercharger system, so we don't lose too much coolant. I'll then look to release the coolant tank with the special clip underneath and pull that completely out, and that hopefully will give us enough space to gain some access to see and look and inspect the dual climate control valve, which is located right down in the bowels of the engine there. Okay, so we've been able to remove the cover, the Caldoofy pipe, and just coming down here you can see we've been able to release the coolant expansion tank. There's two prongs, just one here, one here. There's the nut that's here, and you can see where I put that white bung, there's a little clip just where I'm highlighting now. That just has to be pulled back a bit to release the bottom of the coolant tank, and yes, there will be coolant getting everywhere, and I don't know if that's coming out particularly well, but down there you can see the two domes that are our dual climate control valve or heater valve. But if you can just see the connection down there, it's covered in antifreeze and coolant. This, I think it's an auxiliary pump, and hopefully what we'll be able to do is move that out of the way and then from there we should be able to get better access, release the water or coolant sodden clip down there, the sort of connector for the dual climate control valve, and then I'll either see about releasing the hoses for the dual climate control valve or potentially clamping the two upper pipes, because three pipes that go into the dual climate control valve, clamp them one at a time, release them, plug them like I have with this bung here, and just here this white bung, plug them, and then look to bring up the dual climate control valve through the tiny gap here. Okay, so I've been able to release the dual climate control valve from its bracket, which is just down there, using, I think it's a 10mm bolt extension socket. So I've been able to now maneuver the dual climate control valve into a slightly more accessible position. I'm looking to hopefully clamp and release the two hoses down there, the two top hoses, and then once I've been able to unclamp them, I should be able to put up the dual climate control valve and then get access to the third hose down the bottom there. Should be a little bit easier to access up here rather than trying to unclamp it down here. Well, the valve is now out, and down here you can see the two disconnected hoses, and then just here the bottommost hose, which has come up with the dual climate control valve, and just here is the old valve, which surprisingly doesn't look in too bad a shape. So the next challenge, of course, is to connect up the bottom hose to the new dual climate control valve, trying to guide it back down into the abyss down there. You can see that down there. And then I've got to attempt and try and get more cuts and bruises reconnecting those bottom hoses. But I have lost some coolant when I released the hoses. I was hoping to clamp them, but there isn't really much room down there at all. The detached valves here, which folks use, they're a little bit oily and a bit awkward to get to be honest. Mind you, I say that, these bottom hoses are quite awkward to get to, so we'll see how we get on. Right, so I've got both the new and old dual climate control valve here available. So pulled out the old one this morning, and what I want to do is just do a little bit more troubleshooting by measuring the resistance across the pins. So I'm actually going to measure the outermost ones and get a reading in terms of ohms. So if I just hook in the probes, so that gives me a 29.5 that's showing at the moment, 29.4. If I now go across the old one, that's giving me 24.4. Better than it was measuring previously, but still lower than what's expected. So what I'll now do is attempt to measure either side on both of the dual climate control valves. So I'm just going to take the two leftmost pins just here, and I'm getting 14.8 ohms just there. And if I do the same on the rightmost two pins, so the middle one and the right one, I'm getting 15 on that. I now move over to the old one. I'll do the leftmost two, so it's the middle and the left pin. I'll just get them into position. .4, so that's considerably less. Let's do the right hand side, so the middle pin and the rightmost pin. 14.9. So I think it's safe to say that we've got a failing solenoid, and I think it's this one here, which will probably explain the behaviour we saw in the car. We had hot air coming from the left-hand vents and controlled air, or medium temperature, coming from the right-hand vents. Okay, so this is the new valve. I've just attached the third pipe there, so it's got a Jubilee clip and one of those fasteners on there, so I've reused that. I've also took the opportunity just to put a little bit of grease on the inside, so some dielectric grease, just a little bit to help it ease it onto the prong. And I've also done similar here to the connector. The connector was nice and dry, it was on the old one. I've just put a bit of dielectric grease, high temperature grease in there to make sure that that stays as waterproof as best as possible. And what I'll also do is I'll look to build up a shroud on the connector just here when it's back in situ. So just make a bit of a sheath to protect the top of it, because I did notice when the previous valve was in situ there was a lot of coolant sitting on top of the connector, so that will be useful. The other thing I'm going to do is, if you can just see inside down there, I'm going to go and reconnect the two other hoses. So I'm going to have to lower down the dual climate control valve and literally just work to get those pipes connected back onto there. So let's do that next. Okay, the valve is now back in the depths of the engine bay, and you can see there I've used a Jubilee clip on one of them because the other clip just refused to budge, which is really annoying due to accessibility. Quick progress update. So although I had the dual climate control valve fitted, I realised that the lower hose was twisted. So the whole lot had to come out again, which is quite frustrating. However, that did give me the opportunity to replace the ring clips with some proper Jubilee clips, which I'm much happier with. I think that'll be a tighter fit and a bit easier to maintain going forwards. So just down there, hopefully you can see, I've created a little bit of a sheath using some insulation tape to give a bit of protection for the connection there. So next up, I'm looking to install the expansion tank. Okay, I've been able to reconnect the coolant tank. Bit fiddly, just clicks in there. You have to pull back the catch then click it back into place. Make sure it's aligned here as well. Check everything else okay, and then obviously the securing screw just here. So next up is just the two hoses here, which I'll just go and connect in now. Well, here we are inside the Jaguar S-Type, and what I'm looking to do is to install this replacement second-hand climate control module. You'll recall that the previous module had some circuitry damage. It burnt out a track as a symptom, or as a consequence, shall I say, of the dual climate control valve failing and probably passing through excessive ampage back through to the climate control module. So we've got a known good used one here from our friends at Auto Reserve. You can see the warranty stickers on we've got there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it back up here. So there is a little bolt socket, and it just takes this screw here. It needs a T30 Torx just here. So what I'll do is I'll reconnect it to the two connectors here, offer it up, just slots onto the shelf, and then that'll be plugged in. And then once I've done that, I should be able to proceed with adding coolant to the S-Type, and then we should be able to run the auxiliary coolant pump just to help start the bleeding process. So we're back under the bonnet and literally got a funnel and also some of the salvaged coolant from when we extracted the coolant from the expansion tank. So I'm going to add that back in and then fill it up with some fresh coolant. I'll probably make up another batch in here. 50% recommended coolant, antifreeze with 50% water, and then I'm going to make sure I've fully filled this up. Then what I'm going to do is look to relieve this nut here. I think it's a 19mm hex, and make sure I replenish any coolant in there if it's not full to the brim. We will look to just turn the ignition to position 2. That should actuate the auxiliary pump down there, and then we could just top up here and also at the supercharger as required. Okay, so the coolant tank is filled up to the max. I replaced the bleed screw here and just tightened to roughly 1 Nm, so it's not very tight but in snug. Using my hex, I was able to release the supercharger bleed nut just here. I was able to fill that up just to the neck there, you can see there. I was then able to turn the ignition to position 2, and that actuated the little electric pump down there, the auxiliary coolant pump for the supercharger. Let that run for about a minute or so. The level in there dropped a little bit, the level in here increased a little bit, then settled down. What I'm going to do now is cap this off, tighten up to 45 Nm, which is pretty tight, and then I should be in a position where I can actually start the engine. I'll set the climate control system in the car to high, so I'm going to override the automatic settings and set to high, and that's just really to encourage the flow of heat as the engine warms up into the heater matrix and just help bleed that. So the engine started. I needed to put the air assembly, the Caldoofy pipe, back in place and connect this as well, because the engine wasn't happy with the vacuum imbalance. Done that, engine started fine. I've got the climate control set to high inside the passenger compartment, and I'm just keeping an eye on this. Quite a lot of bubbles were coming out this earlier, so I'll bring the car up to temperature, let it cool down, and then we'll look to add in some more coolant as required to top up. But otherwise, I think we're doing okay. Let's go and check, see what's going on inside the passenger compartment. So here on high. Engine temperature not quite off cold yet. Otherwise, all good. So one of the things I wanted to check was the functioning of the recirculation flap just here. So now we've replaced the climate control module just up here. Everything seems to be fine, but just to demo this, I'm going to hit the recirculation button just over here. So I'm going to press this one here, and then what we should see is this motor here move, this arm over here and actuate the flap. Previously this wasn't working. You may recall that the Jaguar STD IDS system reported a circuit failure. That was caused by the climate control module burnout. So let's just go ahead and do this test. So I'm just going to hit the recirculation button now. Oh, and there she goes. You can clearly see the recirculation flap being actuated. And now if I press the button again, you should see it come back the other way. Recirculation off. And sure enough, here comes the motor and the actuator back the other way. I'm very happy with that. So I think what I'll proceed to do now is refit the glove box. So what I've done to trial fit this is just mesh the clip that's behind this screw here, that's actually in this screw. There's kind of a clip behind this that just fits into the dashboard fascia on both sides. I've aligned that, pushed them up, and then just finger tightened these while supporting the entire glove box. And then what I've been able to do is, I'll get some light on it and bring this up. Hopefully you can see just here we've got the screw just here, and also on the opposite side here there is another screw. Okay, so the screw here is tightened up, also here as well, and then also the ones I highlighted below, down below. So the next step is to look to secure this. One thing to remember is the dampener just here. So if that becomes detached, it's quite easy to reattach. So the final thing is to fit this little cover. There's a screw just there that will take the back of the padding, and then there are just here, I believe, just a push fitting, and that should secure the final bit of the trim. So the original push fitting kind of looks a bit knackered, so I've just got this replacement one here. Try and get them focused, there we go. Just this replacement one. I've fitted one just down here, so if I try and use the mirror, you can see, where's it gone? You see that in the mirror. That bush fitting's gone in there quite nicely. So now I'm just going to do the same with this one on the other side. So just where my finger is where the other push fitting's gone in there. So that's gone cleanly in there. And the other one is just there. And hit those trouble codes. Switch ignition to on. Okay. Oh, there's going to be loads here. So I'm going to clear all these. Let's see if they re-trigger. Okay. Right, so that's better. Cleared all of them. I'm looking at all of the DTC codes. That seems to have cleared. So there are no issues with the rear electronic control module that have been logged. That rear electronic control module is actually linked to the trunk release. So there was a U code there previously as an advisory. Looking at all the others, we are completely clear. Most importantly, the climate control, all good. But all we have is the P1111, which is not actually a DTC really. It is, but it's not actually a code. It's not an error. It just means that all the OBD system checks have been completed since the last full memory clear or reset. So I'm very pleased with this. This is the first time since I've had the car that we've had 0 DTCs. So what we're going to do now is just do some final verification following the replacement of the dual climate control valve and also the remote climate control module that lives just above the glove box. You can see I've got the glove box reassembled and everything's back in place. And the car has had a bit of a shakedown run as we went down to Bicester Heritage just yesterday. No problems at all. So as I say, let's get us started up. What I'm going to do is, with the climate control system, is I'm going to set it onto the minimum possible temperature so that we get the aircon going. And what we'll do is just check to make sure that as the temperature in the engine comes up, we don't start seeing any contamination of hot air coming into the system. So it's just one final check, and the way I'll verify that is using the temperature gun as we did before as part of the diagnostics. And what I'll do is take a reading of all of the vents once the car's been running for around 5-10 minutes or so, with the climate control in manual mode on the minimum low setting. So let's go and do that now. Start her up. Cold start. Should say the weather's filthy today. I think this is the tail end of Storm Dara. Anyway, here we go. So we're going to knock it down from 23 down to the minimum. Here we go. Low. You can see here the recirculation mode has kicked in as well. Turn the screen off. Let that run for a little while, and then we'll come back and measure some temperatures. Okay, so we've got an external temperature of 6 degrees. So I'm just going to annotate that on the sheet if I can. I guess now we can just do some temperature readings using the infrared gun. So to calibrate, I'm just going to take a temperature reading from my wrist, which is 27 degrees. Now I'm going to do the vents. So let's start off with the driver's side. Yep, according to this, it's about -1, and it blooming well feels it as well. It's freezing. So let's see. On the sheet, we're going to record -1, I think. Let's do the center console on the driver's side, and that is showing, oh, this is ridiculous. It must be because of the breeze, but it's very cold. Yeah, I don't quite believe, God, flipping heck, my hand is freezing. I'm going to go -7 before my eyes stop watering. God, yeah. Let's do the other side before I freeze to death. -8. It's so cold in here. And finally, I'm just going to do a reading from the passenger side. So remember, this was the really hot side before. And that is saying, gosh, -4.5. Wow. Let's have a quick look at the engine temperature. So the engine temperature is nearly up to full temperature. So there's nothing wrong here. I think we can safely say that the climate control issue has been fully resolved, and I'm now going to turn this off because it's absolutely doing me in. Let's bring this back up. Oh, God. And that's now back on auto, 23 degrees. And hopefully now we can start thawing out a little bit, because that was really, really, really cold. Okay, engine temperature is fully up to temp. So I'm just going to do some readings now. So we've got 20, 29.3, 28. It's going down a little bit now, it's stabilising. 29, 30. Warm air anyway. Bearing in mind we had it freezing cold just a few minutes ago. Go on this side. Yep, 20. Okay. I think it's fluctuating a little bit. Try over here again. Yep, over here. Yep, and then we go right on the far side. Targeting the right bit. Okay, 3. Over here. It's all over the place. Come on, temperature gun, let's get some stable readings. Here. 5. Okay, over here. 32. Okay, we're seeing some variances, but I'm not unduly worried. Just depends where I'm measuring it, but I'm quite happy. Otherwise, so if you did like this video, if you did enjoy this video, please consider giving it a like, and if you're not already, please consider subscribing as well for plenty more content similar to this coming along soon. Thanks a lot.